Welcome to our podcast, Inspiring Living, with me, Mark Candelaria. I am an architect, blogger, traveler, chef, father, and husband. I am the founder and a partner of a fabulous 20-person architecture firm specializing in high-end residential architecture, designing amazing homes across the country and now the world. We have hosted tours over the last 22 years to Italy, Spain, Oregon, and soon France. And in the course of all this, I have met a lot of interesting people who truly inspire me. We are excited to now be in our third season, and our podcast is all about the opportunities that are right there in front of us to inspire living. Yes, we will talk about architecture and design, but every week we will venture into all sorts of topics that will inspire you, teach you, and motivate you to inspire living every day. My guests will include a wide gamut of amazing people, from those in the design industry to clients to real estate professionals, chefs, artists, sports figures, and philanthropists, and people who just flat out get it. Sit back and enjoy, and let's have some fun exploring all the opportunities that are there just waiting for us. Please subscribe and get ready to be inspired with every podcast. Okay, as my dad says, here we go. Thanks everyone for all the listens to our last couple podcasts, and we have some good momentum happening now, and I'm excited about the podcasts we have coming up, including today's. First, my book, Mark Candelaria Homes, is out, and thank you for all the texts, posts, and messages from those of you who have purchased and received the book, and thank you to all of you who came to my book launch and signing at the Clayton House. This was a special invite affair, as we only invited those featured in the book and our current clients, but we followed that up with a book signing at the Collector's House at the Gainey Village, and what a smashing success that was. Well, thank you for the incredible turnout as I signed books for over 2 hours. A special thank you to my good friend, client, and owner of the Collector's House, Jamie Lynn Fournier, along with her incredible staff and her husband, Roger, for hosting the event and making that a very special day for me. You guys are the best. You can purchase the book on our website. We'll include the link in the episode notes, or you can purchase it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and now I see Target is carrying it. So we're getting out there. Thank you to Schiffer Publishing for getting it really broadly distributed now. I'm seeing it on a lot of different websites, so thank you. 232 pages featuring 12 amazing Candelaria design homes, accompanied by 12 of my favorite recipes, including my trademark paella, which I had the pleasure to make for a family a couple weeks ago. They were silent auction winners for Scottsdale Honor Health, and we had such a fun time for sure, and definitely some more to come. Thank you for the support. We have another book signing also open to the public, set for this Thursday, March 23rd from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Agency, which is located at the northeast corner of Scottsdale Road in Indian Bend next to Wildflower. My good friend and amazing realtor and artist, Cynthia Silva, is hosting this, and this event is for charity. So I invite you to come by, join us there, buy a copy of my book, and I'll be there to personally sign it for you. Thank you to Paradise Valley Lifestyle Magazine for the nice feature on my nighttime career as the Archie Chef. Good job by writer Georgian Yara. Please check it out. She did a great job. It's a great feature. Congrats to our Candelaria design team for once again being named the best residential architectural firm by Ranking Arizona Magazine. I think this is our 10th time in a row we have won. So thank you everyone for voting for us and our team, and get ready to vote for us in 2024. Okay, for today's podcast, it is my pleasure to welcome someone I have admired for years and have had the pleasure to work with and have had as a guest for one of our Candelaria design meals here at Casa Candelaria. Today's guest is an Emmy Award winner on multiple occasions, founder and CEO of her own media group, and the creator, executive producer, and host of the award-winning television series Arizona Highways Television. Without further ado, I welcome Robin Sewell to my podcast, Inspiring Living. And Inspiring Living definitely embodies who you are, my friend. So welcome.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Mark. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, and I love being a guest in your beautiful home. Well,
it's nice to have you here. We chatted in my kitchen, my brand new kitchen here, for about an hour. We could have recorded all of that.
I know.
But some of those we got to keep secret. But it was a lot of fun to catch up with you. And we both have daughters that are graduating from high school this year. And that was what most of our conversation was, just that whole transition in life. These have been our kids for 18 years roughly, and now they're off to college and we're going to become empty nesters. So our conversation quickly transitioned to travel. So I know you love to travel too, and so I think it's just interesting to see how life changes, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. I don't think that I have fully embraced the fact that my daughter is going off to college, and I'm going to be an empty nester because so much of my life has been around creating and doing Arizona highways. But then 6 months into the show, in fact, I found out right after I had jumped out of an airplane that I was pregnant with my daughter.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So even my daughter's been part of Arizona highways
go.
for years. But as you know, I love to travel, not just traveling on the Arizona highways, but traveling outside of Arizona and all around. So as sad as I am about her leaving the nest, I'm also looking forward to this next chapter of my life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be an interesting chapter for our girls too. I mean, it's really rewarding to see how they've grown up and just their dreams and wishes. And obviously you had your dreams and wishes when you were that age, right? And where did you grow up?
So I was born in the Bronx, New York City. When I was 8, we moved to Northern California, the Bay Area, to an area called Los Gatos.
Yep. I've done a house there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, it's actually a beautiful area. Yeah. It's changed a lot since I grew up. Has changed a lot,
yep.
But really, really charming, close to San Francisco, close to the beach.
Yep.
It's got a lot of character. And then I moved for college to Los Angeles and went to UCLA. And
you wanted to kind of pursue a degree or a career in acting and theater, and talk about that a little bit.
So my passion for theater, I think, maybe came a little bit from my parents. My mother always wanted to be on stage. She wanted to be a Radio City Rockette.
Oh, wow.
She used to tell me that when she was a little girl, she used to tap dance, in down the hallway of their apartment building in the Bronx.
Wow.
Those dreams never came to fruition. However, she was a ballroom dance instructor, and that's how she met my dad.
Oh, interesting.
He had come from Oklahoma, of all places. He actually was born on a reservation. So here's my mother, who's this Russian Jew from the Bronx, and then here's my dad, who's, a Native American Oklahoma, but he actually wanted to be an actor.
Wow.
And that's why he went to New York. Yes, he moved to New York to go to the actor's studio. And so they met because they were both trying to make money while they were pursuing their dreams as ballroom dance instructors.
Unbelievable.
So, so I guess I was bit by the bug when I was in high school. I don't think I was really very talented in high school, but I always dreamed that someday I would go to Los Angeles or go to New York and pursue acting. And so that's why I went to
UCLA. Yep. So as we were talking about our daughters, it's kind of neat when you're young to have that opportunity to pursue your dreams, right? Because you don't have to look back and go, well, I wish I would have tried being a Rockette. Right. You actually did really try to pursue your career.
And I talked about this because I can see as a parent, because you've had so much experience and you already know the pitfalls of what it's like to pursue your passions. And there's a part of you that says, yes, you have to do this. But then as you get older, there's that practical side that says, well, I have to pay my mortgage and I have to be realistic. And is this ever going to happen? Because especially in careers like the entertainment industry or something in athletics. Well, I guess in anything in life.
Yeah, anything.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
And it's a crapshoot in a way.
Yeah, well, we talked about being in the right place at the right time. I mean, I know a lot of people with a ton of talent that never got the shot. And then I know people with not as much talent that ended up being incredible.
Right. And it can be like that in any field.
Yeah.
As an architect,
totally.
As a news anchor, as a doctor. I mean, some people are in that case, they either have the chops to do it and stay with it, because there's always going to be pitfalls and challenges.
Totally.
And then you have to be able to have that resilience to get over it. So oftentimes I think as a parent, because we've been there, done that, we will try to influence our children to take the more practical road, because we know
what we think is a safer road.
The safer road, exactly, because we think that, okay, well,
it's hard to see our kids get hurt. I mean, whether it's physically or just spiritually or just rejection.
I used to say that when I was pursuing a career in acting, that rejection became my middle name, not Ann anymore, because they said no to me more times than they said yes.
That's hard.
And you have to keep bouncing back. It's like you have to have Teflon skin.
Right.
But I feel like in many ways, You have to have that in any career
Anything
that you pursue. It doesn't matter.
Well, I
whether
think
you're in
that's
real
always the
estate.
difference. I think a lot of people give up or then use that as an excuse why not to pursue their dream. It's like, oh, this has gotten too hard. I keep getting rejected. Poor me, and they fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, other people, they just keep picking themselves and keep trying. But at some point, some of us realize that, this is not going anywhere and I need to pivot. That's different than giving up, I think. It's just saying I'm taking a different path now.
Correct.
I'm not giving up the journey, but I'm going down another path, which I think then becomes a new adventure, right? And that's kind of what you did.
Absolutely. So when I realized one day I was waiting tables and I would go off and have an audition, and sometimes I would get the part and more often I did not. The great thing about working in restaurants is that you were always fed. So I was not the stereotypical starving actress. I was not, because I ate plenty at the restaurants I worked
we both
at.
did the restaurant thing. I was a starving architect and you were a starving actress.
There you go. Has flexible hours.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it started weighing on me, and it was the idea of that you had no control. I was waiting for luck to happen, and I had no. Basically, I had no control over whether or not I was going to be successful or not, and I didn't like that feeling. I wanted to be control of my own destiny.
Right.
So but working in the restaurant did pay off for me, because there was an anchor in LA. His name was Hal Fishman. He's since passed away. He was one of the most known anchors in LA. He used to come into my restaurant all the time with his son, and we talked all the time. And he would ask me, "So, how'd that audition go? Did you get the part?" And one day he came in, and I was probably having a rather bad day because I did not get the part.
Yep.
And he said, "Have you ever thought about broadcasting?" Which I had not. And he goes, "You should think about broadcast journalism." He goes, "Because it combines in many ways your love of being in front of the camera." He goes, "But you were an English minor." I had told him.
Yep.
And he said, "You love to write." And he said, "You should think about it." And I said, "Well, oh my gosh, do I need to go back to school?"
Right.
I'd already graduated. And he said, "Absolutely not." He goes, "Come down to the station and meet our news director," which I did.
Perfect.
And the news director said, "Well, I'm actually doing an extension course at UCLA. You don't have to, it's not a master's degree." He goes, "Why don't you come and learn about what
this entails
jobs and what opportunities there are in the broadcast business?"
Right.
So I did. And I took the class, and I knew right away. It was
your soul identified it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I said, "I want to be a reporter."
Yep.
And I said, "So what do I do next?" And he said, "You get yourself a job." He goes, "An internship." He goes, "I don't
Just get
care
your
if
foot
they
in the door."
Just get your foot in the door.
Yep.
He goes, "If you have to sweep floors,
Yep.
you do it." And so my dad lived in Scottsdale. And I realized I can't afford to live in LA anymore and get myself an internship and then be waiting tables. So I called my dad and I said, "What do you think if I slept on the couch for 6 months? I'll get a job working at night at a restaurant, Avanti's.
Oh, there you go.
Scottsdale.
Avanti's. Love Avanti's.
I was the first female waitress at Avanti's in Scottsdale when it existed.
Gosh. That's the first restaurant I ever went to when I came to Arizona.
Are you kidding?
First one. I know Patricia Levy really well now, ironically.
Well, Angelo hired me.
Yeah, there you go.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
We have a lot in common.
Yep.
And then I got myself an internship at Channel 10, which was then the CBS station, for no pay.
Yep. Oh.
But it was at least an opportunity to learn the business.
Yeah, that's my story. I saw an ad in the paper for George Christensen's office, he was one of my professors. And when I applied, this is in 1982, the economy was horrible. And I basically told him, "Look, I'll work for free. I just want to work here. This is the job I want. And you guys can pay me whatever you think the work I produced is worth." And they looked at me like, "Seriously?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely seriously." And they hired me. 2 weeks later, I was hired, and I think they paid me $5.65 an hour.
Wow.
But within 5 years, I was a partner of the firm.
Oh my gosh.
No degree, nothing.
Really?
Yeah. I never went to architecture school.
Oh, I had no idea.
No, I just got private tutoring from my professor.
Well, and that was best. That was like hands-on.
Yeah, hands-on.
And that's similar to what happened to me,
Yes.
because I realized that at that point, I had to really sell myself.
Sure.
And so
you develop all these skills because of that chosen path.
And I was really the squeaky wheel. So I was the most ambitious, obnoxious intern they had. I would go out with every reporter on the field, and then I would go and I would write the story while they wrote the story. I would beg editors with food to edit it for me. I would convince them to shoot a stand-up. So I was putting together the same stories that the reporters were, just mine weren't airing.
Yeah.
And what the news director said to me at the time, he said, "You can show me everything you do." He goes, "If one day you show me something that is really worth putting on the air, I'll put it on the air." So I was so
that motivated
tenacious.
you.
It was ridiculous. And
That's
I kept
good.
putting things, and he kept saying, no, no, no. And then one day I came up with this idea they were doing a story on a boxer named Michael Carbajal.
Yeah, I was just reading about him yesterday.
This young kid. And I decided that I was going to do the story on his mother. Totally different angle, not on Michael at all.
That's
and
cool.
what it was like to be a mom of a young boxer and the fear she must have watching her son go into the ring.
Yeah. Well,
So,
just based on what we were just talking about earlier with what our daughters are doing, can you imagine if they were boxers?
Exactly. So it's like on one hand being very proud, but on the other hand being a parent and being worried about your son. So I put that story together with no idea what was going to happen to it, put it on my news director's desk, and he ran it.
There you go.
And then then that was the beginning of my audition tape that I put together to eventually get my very first job, which was in Fort Myers, Florida.
Wow. So from Phoenix, you went to Florida.
I became a reporter. That was my first.
Now, how did you end
job.
up in Florida?
Well, when you are a young reporter, you have to throw tapes to every market in the country.
I see.
It doesn't matter. You go.
Right.
You go.
You just
where the
cast a
job
big
is.
net.
Exactly. You don't have a lot of options. It's not like you could say, "Oh, I would like to work in New York."
Yeah.
Oh, I would like to work in.
You're going to
in
work wherever.
LA. And Phoenix at the time was already a pretty big market, so no one was going to hire me. And what the news director said to me, which was a really great bit of advice, I had said, I really want to be on the air, and I'd love to live here. I had already enjoyed living here, and I had some family. And he said, if you continue doing what you're doing, he said, you could probably eventually be on the air here. He said, but you will always be known as the intern. And he said, I would suggest that you go somewhere else and gain experience. And then come back with that experience.
Right. Because then you're not typecast as that role again anymore.
Like here's the girl from LA, the actress,
who
wanted to be a broadcaster. And I think because broadcasting and news was so much more serious than it was to be an actress, that I think he wanted me to have those chops.
No, that's good advice.
So that I would come back and people would have more respect for me.
Right. So you went to Fort Myers, Florida. How long were you there?
Oh, I was not there very long. I had a year contract, and I hate to say this on your podcast because I don't want anybody listening to think that they should go down my road. Well, first of all, my first day on the job, there was a hurricane.
Oh, well, okay, there's some news. There's something to cover.
So they sent me out for hurricane duty.
Oh, my God.
So my first day doing a live shot, I thought it was all about looking pretty. And I'm out there with all this full head face of makeup on and my umbrella, and it's a hurricane. The mascara's coming down my face.
God.
My hair's crazy. I lost my umbrella. So much for looking good on camera. I actually only was there for 4 months, maybe not even that long. And then a friend of mine knew of a job opening in San Diego.
Oh, wow.
And it was a better job because it was not just a reporter, but it was also a weekend anchor job.
Oh, wow. Good.
And it was,
You jumped at that.
I basically broke my contract and I left.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I went to San Diego.
And you got the job.
I got the job.
Awesome. So then how long were you in San? So then you were a co-anchor?
So I was a weekend anchor.
Weekend anchor, okay.
And I was a reporter, but I really was more, I still wanted to be more of a main anchor.
Yeah.
So what I did was I created more opportunities for myself, and San Diego was a military town.
Yep.
And a lot of people were going out for the Gulf War and all that, and they were being stationed and they weren't coming back for months. So I created my own, you have to create your own opportunities.
Yeah, totally.
So I went to the news director and I said, let's create Navy news. And we'll go around and we'll do stories. And what we'll do is we'll work with AFRTS and we'll send it to the the military folks who are out there for 6 months. And I went out and I did interviews with their families.
Wow, that's cool.
And all that. So I think I had that taped together.
Yep.
And so that gave me the opportunity to go to my next job, which was in Seattle.
Wow.
And then I went there as the main anchor.
During the weekly news.
During the weekly news.
Wow, that's a big transition.
Yes.
So how'd you like Seattle?
I loved the city. Loved it. I thought it was so cosmopolitan. Interesting people, great restaurants. That's when I got introduced to Starbucks. So, I had a Starbucks high for, all day long. I would have 5 lattes a day because it was gloomy. Gosh. What I didn't like about Seattle was the weather. Yeah. I really felt that my skin was turning gray. And I really believe that I developed that sad disease because I lived in Sunshine States my whole life. I had come from San Diego. I grew up in California.
And it's gloomy. I mean, and then you're so far north that in the winter, it is dark like 4 o'clock. And it doesn't get light till like 8:30 in the morning.
Right. And the thing is that it's not that it just pours. It's just gray. It's
just,
Yeah, like I could almost handle the rain.
Yeah.
Because that's something happening.
But you just don't see the sunshine.
Every day it was just gray.
Yeah.
And I could just feel it happening. So as much as I love the city and I love the beauty of Seattle, I mean, it's just stunning.
Yeah.
And it's so
it's another great architect city.
And I'll tell you, the news in Seattle was one of the best. It was one of the best news atmospheres you could ever work with. It was really smart news. It was like New York Times, Wall Street Journal. I mean, really, really great journalists telling amazing stories.
Wow.
So from that standpoint, I loved my peers, my colleagues. I loved going to Pike Place Market.
Yeah, that's fun.
There were so many things that I liked, but I knew I could not live there forever. In fact, I knew that I needed to get out.
So how long were you there?
I was there for 2 years.
Okay. And then you came here?
Nope.
Keep going. I want to hear the whole story here.
Then I went to Sacramento.
Okay.
So
a little more sunshine. Yep.
And my goal at the time, because I grew up in the Bay Area, is I always thought I wanted to be an anchor in San Francisco.
Yeah. So you were getting closer to the target.
Exactly. And there wasn't an opportunity in San Francisco. In fact, at the time I was there, most of the anchors had been there forever. They never left.
Yeah.
Anchors never, ever left.
That's a beautiful place to be an anchor, I'm assuming.
San Francisco, exactly. So I thought, well, if I go to Sacramento, also it was the capital of California, I'd be covering a lot of interesting stories, a lot of news. And I know that a lot of San Francisco stations look to Sacramento reporters because they are right next to the capital. So that's where I went next.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 3 years.
Okay. Then where did you go?
Then I came here.
Then you got to Arizona. Okay. And tell us about the Arizona story.
So my contract was up in Sacramento.
Yep.
I was waiting for that San Francisco job to come open, which it did not. And my agent at the time was throwing out job opportunities. So I was offered a job in Boston to go there. I was offered a job on a syndicated television show in Los Angeles. So I actually flew out for that job. I did the audition on the Entertainment Tonight set. It was more of an entertainment type job. Really interesting and really exciting. So, and then I got a call from the same person who had called me about the San Diego job. And he worked for the company Scripps Howard in Cleveland. And he knew that the station, which was Fox here at the time, was going to make the transition to ABC. So they wanted to change the look. They wanted to change the feel of the broadcasters. They just wanted something different. And he said, you would be perfect to start up the ABC station here in Phoenix. So I had these 3 job opportunities. Wow. And I was leaning towards, even though I loved the Boston job, I just didn't want to keep moving and starting all over again. I didn't know anybody in Boston. It would be brand new for me again. So I might have been leaning towards the entertainment job, but the only problem with entertainment back then is because it was a brand new show, they only guaranteed a certain amount of months. And if it got picked up, great. But if it didn't get picked up,
you're out.
Phoenix, my dad still lived here. My stepmom was here. My mom was close. She was in California. I'd already made some friends here from being here. It was a 5-year contract, no cut contract. It was going to be ABC, brand new, everything they were doing. And I said, okay,
let's
let's
it.
go.
Awesome.
So I came to ABC as the main anchor.
And what year was that,
That
roughly?
was in 1996.
1996, okay. And you were the main anchor for how long?
For 7 years.
Yeah, it's quite a while, as I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then your life kind of changed from all of that, just being here in Phoenix. I mean, a lot of things happened during those 6 years or 7 years.
What I loved about being here is because I was here for much longer than in the other places, I decided it was time to put down roots.
Yeah.
And roots to me meant making friends outside of my broadcast family, because we work so many crazy hours that it's really hard to develop relationships outside, because who else goes to work at noon and doesn't get home till midnight?
Right.
And you're always on call as a broadcaster because breaking news happens all the time, and
Yep.
you need to be expected to be in if a big
ready.
story happens.
Yep.
So developing relationships and friendships outside is not easy.
Yeah.
But
makes
I
sense.
really decided that it was important. So the main thing for me was to get involved in the community. And because I was the main anchor, they encouraged us to MC events,
Yep.
to participate in working
Community
with community
activities.
functions and activities. So I really threw myself into that world and got involved with everything from the Boys and Girls Club to a Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at your list here. There's quite a few.
To everything.
Yeah.
You know, I got involved with, Bill and Beth made me, or Bill Dorr, they made me a fashionality for all the community work. And so I developed these friendships that were outside of broadcasting.
Which is always great, isn't it?
Which made me love being here.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I felt like I belonged.
So let me ask you that question, because I always ask people this about Phoenix, and I always wonder, the feeling here in Phoenix is just such a family. I just feel like everyone knows everybody here. It's just like, I always call Phoenix the biggest Mayberry. Does it feel that way to you in Los Angeles or Seattle or San Diego?
I cannot.
It's different, isn't it?
You and I are so much on the same page, because when people ask me what it is that I love about this area, I say that's what it is.
Yeah.
You can be whoever you want to be. You can create whatever you want to be.
Right.
You can build a business if you want. It doesn't feel like you have the same restrictions, challenges
as in other cities.
You feel like you have entry. In a lot of cities, you have to have been there for so long.
Yeah.
There's this, hierarchy. There's a different sort of, you're a family dynamic, because your family's been there for 100 years, and you have to be. I feel like here you have you have all of these opportunities. You just have to make it. They're accessible to you.
Yeah, and it feels like people want to help you here. I mean, people are always. I just feel exactly what you said. It just seems like a very encouraging environment compared to other cities I've been in, and people connect here.
Right.
I mean, there's events, and everybody knows everybody,
Right.
and it's just I don't know. I just think it's a very unique city in that aspect.
I think people are very open.
Yeah.
And they're excited. And I think part of it is because so many people come from so many different places.
Yeah, I think so too.
So they're looking for a community.
Right.
I mean, you come here from Chicago or LA or New York or from Portland or Canada.
We've all come from somewhere else.
We've all come from somewhere else. That's our commonality.
That is. Yep. And I think then we are a little bit more appreciative and a little more encouraging and a little more accepting of outsiders. So,
absolutely.
So in covering the news, I'm reading your list here. Some of the major events you've covered over the years. I mean, you were at 9/11. You were on ground zero during 9/11.
I was. So I'll tell you my 9/11 story. It was the first time I had taken a vacation in who knows how long. And I had gone to this retreat, I guess. It was a place where you hike a lot, and I had read about it on Oprah's Favorite Things. It was called the Ashram. And it's a no-frills place where you just really hike like 70 miles a week, and you eat very little food. And so that was a vacation to me. And I remember we were up on top of a mountain. I think it was in Calabasas, California. And it was a very small group of us, maybe 6. And there was a girl who was an international journalist. She came from somewhere in Europe, and she had a pager on, and the pager goes off, and she stopped and looked at it, and her face turned white. I think she didn't believe it. And so she didn't say anything, but I could see something was wrong. The pager goes off again, And she told us what had happened. And both of us said to our hike instructor, we need to leave.
Yeah.
So I walked down, we climbed down the mountain, and I couldn't get home. I was only in Los Angeles. I couldn't get home. There were all the airspace had been closed, so I couldn't get a flight home. I couldn't even find a car to rent. So somebody had a car and had a driver and drove me home.
Wow.
I literally drove to Phoenix, jumped in the shower, put a ball cap on, and went into the station because 9/11 was happening.
Yeah.
And I don't think I went home for, I don't know, it seemed like a week.
Yeah.
I mean, we were on the air for 24
That was crazy.
hours. It was crazy. We had hotel rooms that people would go to. I mean, the anchors would just literally
keep going.
Go get off the air, sleep for a little bit, because then you went back on, because we had 24-hour coverage, because nobody really knew what was happening.
No one knew how it was going to end.
No one knew, and everything was so fluid.
Yeah.
So the information, we had no scripts.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, information was coming to us. We would have producers running and handing us paper. Here's an update. Here's an update.
Yeah.
Here's an update. It was the most frightening, exhausting weeks.
Yeah, you didn't know what was next.
No.
That was the thing. And then, as the plane crashed in Pennsylvania, and you had the thing in the Pentagon, I mean, you were just like, okay, are they going to crash into Glen Canyon Dam?
Right.
You
And
didn't know.
And we had so many Arizona connections, because the fire chief at the time brought a group, because they all needed help.
Yeah.
I mean, New York, everybody came to New Yorkers' aid. It was really breathtaking and inspiring to see the courage of people. And so our fire chief at the time, Bob Kahn, I remember he assembled a group of people to go to New York and help go
out
through the rubble and look for survivors. And so we were interviewing, there were just so many stories. We were interviewing aviation experts. We were interviewing people who had family there, people who lost people there.
It was tough.
It was tough.
Yeah, I think that, looking back, I think that's the last time this country has truly been united.
Yes.
Sadly, but I think that's the one time we all felt like we were Americans together in a cause.
I agree with you so much. And when I really felt that? So less than a month later, is when the Diamondbacks were in the World Series.
Yeah.
Remember? Against the New York Yankees.
I was designing Jerry Colangelo's house at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you remember that. So
totally.
They sent me back to cover the news angle of how are New Yorkers faring, what's happening in New York post 9/11, especially in the Diamondbacks being there. They sent my sportscaster back there to cover the game. We all were located at Yankee Stadium. And it was, so all of our satellite trucks were there. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in my life.
Wow.
I mean, the stadium was packed with satellite trucks. There were reporters there from all over the world covering this event.
Right.
So I would go out and do stories all during the day. I went to the firehouse that lost the most people.
I've been to that firehouse, and I have a friend whose brother was lost that day.
Oh.
I know her really well, and we were there in that firehouse. It's up on like Broadway and whatever.
It was with like a crow's
42nd.
right there. They were the first ones on the scene and lost most of them. I barely got through that story.
Yeah, that was tough.
It was so tough to do that. I did the story on my brother was a New York City cop. He has since retired, and he's also the biggest Yankee fan on the planet. So I interviewed my brother, being a cop during 9/11,
wow,
and being a Yankee fan and what it was like. We did so many different stories, but going back to what you said about the country being united, I was floored about how New Yorkers came together and what I watched, and how compassionate and just generous of spirit. I mean, the way they helped each other, the way they were so kind. And, I would go up to them and interview them on the streets and tell them, here I am in Arizona. And they said, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for sending the firefighters. Thank you for all of your letters and the water you've sent and the provisions. And it was so kind and so gentle that it blew me away.
Well, it's a good lesson too. I mean, because that's not the last time that something like that sadly is going to happen. I mean, there's going to be earthquakes, there's going to be disasters, and it's just one of those things that I think people got to put the politics aside and just be human beings.
Well, and I think people came to realize is that we're all one big family.
Yep.
And this happened to us. This was the greatest act of terrorism. And, even though you could say, well, I didn't know somebody or I didn't have a family member, you could also say, but I can so empathize with what these people are feeling. And this could have been us. And this is, one of the greatest cities. And how could this happen, in New York City and destroy, so many lives.
It's amazing how New York's bounced back from that, though.
So
isn't
resilient.
It?
Yeah. Well, I went back. So I went back again.
Yeah.
They sent me back for the anniversary. And I already, and it was only months later, saw how New Yorkers were coming together.
Yeah.
I mean, I still found the profound sadness there, but there was just this energy of people saying, look, we're not going to let them get to us.
Right.
We're better than this.
Right.
And we're going to fight back, and we're going to build back. We're going to be stronger.
It's amazing when you go down there, and that memorial is just it's just very touching, and I've been there on the anniversary. It's just it moves you.
Took my daughter, and I was very hesitant.
I saw your posts
to take her there when she was little, but I felt very strongly that this is such a big part of who we are and our history, and it's something, when people say we can never forget, we must remember. That's why we have to read their names. That's why we cannot forget that this happened. And so that's why I thought it was so important, since it was not a part of her life. She wasn't born, that she needed to understand the impact of what had happened. So interestingly enough, we got there and I was so nervous about her seeing it, but they had an audio version done by a 13-year-old girl.
Interesting.
And so I had her wear those headphones, and that girl took her through it, and it was more geared towards children. Yeah. And
different perspective.
Yes. And I made the choice, though, not to take her into some of the areas of the memorial, the areas that they had all the video clips. Yeah. Because I thought that would be...
Yeah, it looked tough.
It would be too tough for her to see. But we talked about all the different, we went and saw the sites, and we and also too, because my dad worked in the World Trade Center. He was a commodities broker.
Holy cow.
So that we had so much in common, and me being from New York. Yep. So I thought it was very powerful and very important for her to see that memorial.
Yeah. Interesting. So you did the news anchor business for quite a while, right? 7 years, you said? Mm-hmm. And then how did you transition to Arizona Highways and your whole media company?
So I was ready to make a transition. I think I was just burnout from news. As much as I loved it, loved my
you talked
station,
about the schedule and the commitment.
I had really no life. I was traveling all the time, and I just felt like I needed to take a step away for a little while. Yep. I still had an agent in New York, and we were looking at other opportunities. In fact, I auditioned for what was then the Regis and Kathy Lee show. When she left, I auditioned for a spot next to Brian Gumbel on CBS Good Morning. So I auditioned for a lot of jobs. And then what I think really hit me, I was offered a job as a correspondent for NBC. And I was sitting in the interview with the HR person after I had done all my auditions, and I said to her, so where will I be living? Because correspondents are all over the country, and they're all over the world, actually. And she chuckled, and she said, out of a suitcase. And because as a correspondent, you're on call anywhere. As a big story happens, they send you go. And I think there was a moment of clarity there. I had moved so much in my life. Mm-hmm. And then I had come from being in Phoenix, where I started to have a family, which I considered was my community. Yep. I'd made so many friends. And I thought about the idea of living out of a suitcase and starting all over again and not knowing anybody, not having a community. And it was kind of at that time of my life where I said, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
As you get older, your perspective,
that's where I was.
It changes.
I mean,
what you value becomes completely different than when you're 20.
And when I was 20, I would have loved that job.
Exactly.
I would have jumped on that job to be Christiane Amanpour and be in the middle of a war zone. I mean, that would have been a journalist's dream to cover all those. But at that point in my life, I said, if I do this, I will never have a family.
Yep.
I just won't have the things that I also want in my life. And I felt that I would regret it.
Yep.
So I started looking for other options, and I had somebody from an agency who was thinking about doing an Arizona show say, would you like to be the host of a Arizona travel show? And I thought it was a very interesting proposition, but I didn't want to be just a talent anymore. I've always been a talent. And I also know that being a talent comes with its liabilities, because if they don't like you anymore, you're done.
Yeah.
And I felt that at that time I was ready for a new adventure. And I said, well, I'd like to do that, but I want to produce it. I want to have a stake in it on the back end.
Right.
And so I started to pursue what that would look like to create a show, realized that at the time, no one had created their own show, like a locally produced show, independent of the television stations. And I went, oh, wow, this is like brand new. This is like breaking new ground, new territory. And
which, knowing you, that should have been pretty exciting.
It was exciting and really frightening at the same time, because I thought, well, I have no roadmap.
Right.
I don't have anything to follow.
Right.
But goes back to my entertainment days. So I went back to the friends and the relationships I had built then and said, oh my gosh, well, they're doing it in LA all the time. And I connected with a production company there and realized, okay, if I can find the funding, if I can put this together, I'm going to hire them
to do it,
to fly out here and do it.
Yep.
And the pieces just started to fall together. And then when I say it was that easy, it wasn't. It took a year of convincing people that I could go from being a news anchor to producing a television show with having no experience to do it. And then convincing television stations that actually a show about Arizona would be successful and really interesting and viewer. Because basically what happened was I thought, okay, I need to have a brand. I can't be Robin's Arizona, even though I might have wanted to be, but I thought, I don't know that would work. And I thought, what is the most iconic Arizona brand? Arizona Highways. Yeah. It had been around forever.
We had hundreds of them in my house in Colorado when I was growing up.
Everybody knew Arizona Highways. And everybody respected Arizona Highways. And they were this ambassador of Arizona. So I remember I called up Win Holden, who was then publisher. I had known him from my days. Him and I did the Fiesta Bowl together. We have done so many community events. He was a friend. And I said, I have this brilliant idea. And he said, great, what is it? I said, the Arizona Highways television show. And in a truly Win fashion, he kind of laughed in this very snarky way. And he said, if I had a dime for everyone who wanted to do the Arizona Highways television show, I'd be a rich man.
Oh my gosh.
Because this is not a novel idea. And I went, oh my gosh, like the wind out of my sails.
Yeah.
And I said, what? What are you talking about? He goes, I've had production companies from all over the country. I've had everybody want to do it. And I said, and what happened? He said, well, they think I'm going to pay for it. He said, I'm a state agency. We are owned by the state of Arizona. We're not going to do it. And he goes, and nobody.
What that is.
What is going on?
I don't know.
He said, but he goes, you have to fund it.
Huh.
He goes, you have to figure out how to do it. And he goes, so let me tell you what I told everyone else. I'm going to give you the same thing. If you can figure out how to put it together.
Yeah, the financial side of it.
Right. And he said, and then you can put something together for me that I feel is commensurate with the magazine, the level of the integrity of the magazine, and will represent the magazine
in the right way.
In the right way. Mm-hmm. He said, then I will give you the license to be able to do it.
There you go. That's a good deal.
And I walked away thinking, oh my gosh. First of all, this is a huge challenge. I have to do this, but I also felt like if no one else could do it, am I really going to be able to do this? And
you always get those doubts, don't you?
But sure enough, I figured it out.
Just got to get in there and go for it.
Went back to him. Had a group of amazing sponsors from corporate. I put a state and private public partnership
I was reading about that. That's interesting.
to to promote the state of Arizona.
Yep.
Went back to Wynn, put a tape together for him to see it, and that was the beginning of Arizona Highways Television.
So then you left the anchorship, and
no, I had already left.
You had left.
I had left a year before.
Gotcha.
And Arizona Highways Television was born in 2004.
So it took about a year and a half to put it all together.
Yes,
wow.
absolutely.
Yeah, these things don't happen overnight. That's what people think sometimes, don't they?
No.
I mean, these things take time, and it's a lot of work, right?
I still cannot believe the day that we watched our first show debut, and actually a real television show, the first of its kind in this state. And I watched the graphics, and I watched the credits roll, and I saw it, and it was I bawled like a baby.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was one of the greatest days of my life,
that's
and
awesome.
I think it still is.
That's so cool. Well, Arizona is a unique state, isn't it?
Mm-hmm,
I mean, the only thing we don't have is the ocean. I guess we were supposed to have the ocean, but the surveyors ran out of water, so they had to make a beeline to Yuma. Otherwise, we were supposed to go straight west, and Puerto Penasco would have been in Arizona.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy, but it is. I mean, I remember when I first came here in '79. I was going to school in Boulder. And I've said this story many times, but I walked through the ASU campus, and I'm like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Palm trees, orange trees, and the most beautiful women I've ever seen anywhere in the world.
Everybody says that about the women at ASU.
Oh, my gosh.
I think that's why most of the male population goes to ASU.
Well, after you went back to Boulder, and it was Granolaville, it's like, ooh. So it was nice to come to Arizona. So what's some of your favorite things about Arizona? What are some of the most beautiful spots or stories that have stuck out in your mind about Arizona Highways Television?
Well, I mean, oh my gosh, Mark,
it's endless, right?
It's endless, and people say that to me all the time. They said, aren't you ever going to run out of stories? And I said, well, Arizona Highways Magazine has been around for 100 years.
Yeah,
they never run out of stories because you can go back to the same place time and time again and always find a different story. I mean, it's not as if
it's always evolving.
It's always evolving,
mm-hmm.
And when we go, we only have a finite amount of time because
right.
we only have a 22-minute show when you have commercials.
Sure.
So that's maybe 4 stories.
Yeah.
So you go to a community and there are
thousands of stories.
You find more stories and you want to go back. I think it's hard for me to really say there's one favorite place or something I love more than others because I find every place I go really interesting, and that's because some places I love because they're just so simply beautiful.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't love Sedona and
right.
that Red Rock? I mean,
right.
it's just really, really special. There's an area that we discovered years ago called Alpine, Arizona.
Yep.
And it's as green. No one would believe you're in Arizona when you go to.
You think you're in Colorado.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that strand of ponderosa pines. I mean, it's just so
That's
fabulous.
Beautiful.
Or I remember one time going down south and going to the Chiricahuas.
Yeah, I've never been there. I want to go there.
It's amazing. They call it the land of standing up rocks.
Yeah.
And in its own right is so simply beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, so there are so many places that I love just because of their sheer beauty.
And the diversity of the state.
The diversity of the state. But I also love the fact that Arizona is super quirky.
Yeah.
And that also has its charm.
Yep.
So you go to, we just were in Superior last week for 3 days.
Yep.
And we did a story on the world's smallest museum. We did a story on, there are so, on Boyce Thompson Arboretum.
Yeah,
I mean, there's
neat.
So many interesting things.
Yeah, and that's just in a little radius around Superior.
Exactly. I mean, it's just these little quirky little restaurants and places. You go down to Bisbee. I love
Bisbee's fun.
I did a story in Bisbee that's still today one of my favorites. It was a guy who calls himself the Bee Guy. And so by day, he is an exterminator. And he gets all dressed up in all the crazy bee gear, and he goes out, and then he makes award-winning mustards and honeys that he ships to Europe.
So he's both sides of the coin.
Yeah, he's the funniest guy. He has this little shop on Main Street. He's got this great sense of humor.
That's funny.
We also did a story on a girl, and she does tours in a Hearst. She does ghost tours in a Hearst.
Wow.
And we did a pub crawl with her. And, I mean, so funky. They have the Museum of the Bizarre that has just these weird things you find. We did a story on these 2 photographers who actually came from New York, and they were these really renowned photographers that had shot celebrities and dignitaries, and they just decided to come to Bisbee and start up their own business. So we have met so many interesting people. I mean, Williams is a really cool place. You know, you stay overnight, and then you get on the Grand Canyon Railway.
I mean, it's endless. Wickenburg. I mean,
I love Wickenburg.
Yeah, it's so cool. Or the highway from Wickenburg up to Prescott the back way. No one ever does that.
No.
But it is beautiful.
No, because I think a lot of people tend to go to the same places.
They do.
And they're great.
Yeah.
A lot of people
Sedona and Prescott.
Sedona, Flagstaff, and
that's
they miss out on going to Tubac.
Yeah.
They miss out.
We were just in Tubac a couple weekends ago. Went to the San Xavier del Bac Church and Tumakakori or whatever.
Tumakakori,
Unbelievable.
Right?
Yeah,
or you
so
go
cool.
down and go wine tasting.
Yeah, it's right there.
We did a half-hour show on Arizona wine and wineries.
Yeah.
And the wineries in Cottonwood and then down in Sahuarita.
It's, like I said, it's endless. It's
it really
totally
is.
endless.
And so people really need,
you need to get off the highway a little bit.
Right. I mean, look, I travel a lot outside of Arizona, but that's because I travel so much inside of Arizona.
Right.
But I think people should really explore their own state because I think they'd have much greater appreciation of where they live if they said, you know what, I'm going to do some weekend trips and get out there.
How many years have you been doing the show now?
Since 2004.
2004. That's crazy.
I know.
So it is endless.
It is endless.
So what's the next chapter for Robin Sewell?
Well, I think I mentioned this to you before because I would like to profile you. We are looking to do a new show that's more about profiles and individual people, and that's really a spin-off of what we're doing because every time we go into these communities, we meet these really, really interesting people.
That's why I like doing podcasts because it's just, you always get these little tidbits of people when you meet them, but when you do a podcast, you find out so much more.
And that's exactly how I feel. And that's also another reason why I was interested in transitioning out of news because I couldn't really do in-depth stories.
Right.
And my favorite show on TV has always been CBS Sunday Morning.
Yeah, me too.
And the reason we both like it is because
they get into a little more in depth.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that so much because I really get to know these interesting people I would have never thought about or places I never would have gone. And all of a sudden I go, oh my gosh, I love that accordion player.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I want to go to Vermont and drink that syrup or eat that syrup or whatever. I mean, you find so many interesting. I mean, I watched a story once that they did on polka dancing.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do polka dancing, but then I thought, oh, maybe I would.
Well, I love now too that they've transitioned it also into a podcast. So during the Sunday, if I can't watch it on TV, I can listen to it on the podcast anytime I want.
So I would like to create something like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Based on all the interesting people that I have met. And I think everybody, as you have found through your podcast, have these great, interesting stories.
Oh, yeah.
And I think our viewers would love to hear more than just a soundbite about someone. They want us to go in depth. So that's sort of on our to-do list. And my daughter's going off to college, so I write a lot for different magazines, and I'd like to write more. I'd like to write more about my travels, and you know, there's still so many more things I want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think as we get older, I think, you know, like I want to write music. There's just, you realize that there's really no limitations.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're younger, you're kind of intimidated by it all. But when you're older, you really don't care. I'm just going to do what I want to do. Yep. And I'm going to go for it.
Yep.
Do you feel that way?
I absolutely feel that way.
Yeah.
I feel like now, I feel like the sky's the limit.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think now is the time to pursue things that you're super passionate about. I think when you're younger, you're also looking for...
We're trying to make a living.
You're making a living. I've got to have a career path.
I got to put food on the table.
And I think now you sit there and say, God, what are some of the things that
I've always wanted
to do? So I want to pursue all of those things while I still have the opportunity to do them. You know, it's that next chapter.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that about you. So tell us about the show. When is it on? And give us all your links and all that stuff. We'll put these in story notes too. But
Arizona Highways airs Saturdays at 8:30 on Easy Family, Channel 3. And it airs on Sundays at 4:30 p.m. on Channel 5.
Channel 5, that's right. Yeah, I love watching it.
Thank you.
I'm always curious where you're going to go next.
Oh,
and if I've been there before.
Well, we've got a lot more new shows coming up. We did a show recently in Mesa. We did a show in Gilbert. We just got back from Superior. We're going to go to Yarnell. We have, I think we're doing Cottonwood. We've got a whole list of stories coming up. So
awesome. And congratulations with your daughter.
Thank you.
As a mom, that's a big feat to get them off to college.
Congratulations to you too.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Let's compare notes on what their journey is and what our journey is and how we're doing.
And then we'll do some traveling in the
let's do that.
As empty
let's
nesters,
have some dinners and travelers. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Robin. Take care, and we'll do this again.
All right, Mark. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, Robin, for your time on a Sunday morning. Your career story is amazing and definitely inspiring. And once again, it points out how following something you are passionate about and never giving up, even if you have to pivot a few times along the way, is the key to success. Keep up the great work, Robin, and we will enjoy watching you showcase our beautiful state on Arizona Highways Television. Because inspiring living is all about the people and the organizations that inspire us, we are excited to have Monogram Appliances as one of our sponsors. Anytime we do a new kitchen or a kitchen remodel, Monogram Appliances are what we recommend to our client. Their appliances are the definition of luxury. They're meticulously detailed using the finest materials and an ownership experience that is second to none. This is how Monogram is always thinking ahead and inspiring and elevating the kitchen experience. Because at Monogram, they don't just elevate one thing, they elevate everything. I want to say a big thank you to my good friends at Stockett Tile and Granite Company, where your project is their priority. I personally want to thank the Stockett team along with so many others who contributed to the success of both our fabulous demonstration kitchen in our Candelaria design office expansion and now our kitchen at Casa Candelaria. I have had the pleasure of working with the Stockett team for nearly 40 years on many spectacular projects, and trust me, they are the epitome of excellence when it comes to tile, marble, and granite work, bar none. Their skill and customer service is impeccable, and the bottom line is they are just good people. I have traveled with, dined with, and just had good times both personally and professionally with Dave Stockett and his lovely wife Becky, and they are the best. When it comes to your next tile and stone project, make sure Stockett Tile and Granite is part of your team. Okay, we have some great podcasts coming to you in the weeks ahead, so stay tuned, and thanks for your continued listening. Thank you also for the ratings and reviews, and if you can, please give us a rating and review as it really helps promote our podcast. We do our best to inspire living in everything we do, from our podcast to our cooking classes to our tours, and of course with our Candelaria Design homes. Make sure to order my new book, and you're going to love it. Okay, have a great week, everyone. Stay safe, and let's all live our lives with love, compassion, grace, and positivity. Thanks for the listen, and we look forward to connecting again soon.